For most of my life, I was terrified of failure. Not just scared, I mean paralyzed. I turned down opportunities, avoided risks, and sabotaged anything that had the slightest chance of going wrong. I told myself I was being smart there, but really, I was hiding. Here's the story of how I let fear control me and how I finally took my power back. I was always the potential kid. You know, the type: good grades, polite, the one teachers loved. My parents had high hopes for me, and I clung to that praise like oxygen. I couldn't fail, not because I wanted success, but because I was terrified of what failure would say about me. In high school, I remember skipping auditions for the school play, even though I loved acting, just because I didn't think I'd be cast. I never raised my hand unless I was 100% sure I had the right answer. Every decision had to be safe. By the time I was in college, it was worse. I changed my major 3 times, not because I didn't know what I wanted, but because I was afraid I wouldn't be good enough at any of them. I avoided internships, big projects, even relationships. On the outside, I looked fine. I got good grades. I followed the rules. But inside, I was shrinking. I couldn't even enjoy small wins because I was already worrying about the next possible failure. One night, everything boiled over. I got an email about a job opportunity, something I had secretly dreamed of doing, but instead of feeling excited, I spiraled. What if I mess it up? What if they regret hiring me? What if I'm exposed as a fraud? I deleted the email. I told myself it wasn't the right time. And then I stared at my screen and started crying. Not because I missed out on that job, but because I realized I'd been living my whole life like this, controlled, afraid, hollow. The next few days after that breakdown were foggy. I went through the motions: classes, emails, study groups, but I felt disconnected, like I was watching my life happen from outside of it. My roommate noticed something was off. One night she asked, "Are you okay?" I didn't even answer. I just burst into tears. For the first time, I admitted how miserable I was. How I felt like a failure even though I hadn't technically failed at anything. How I was scared of being average. Scared of starting something and not finishing it. Scared of letting people down. And she said something I'll never forget. "You're not scared of failing. You're scared of being seen trying and not being perfect." That hit me like a punch. She was right. My fear wasn't about failure itself, it was about judgment. About disappointing people. About looking weak. I started journaling every day after that. Just a few pages in the morning. It felt weird at first, but slowly, patterns started to emerge. I realized how many choices in my life were based on avoidance, not desire. I read a quote somewhere: "Perfectionism is just fear in high heels." And it stuck with me. So I made a decision. A small one, but it mattered. I was going to do one thing I had been avoiding, just to prove to myself that fear doesn't own me. That week, I signed up to perform at an open mic night. I'd written poetry since I was a teen, but never showed it to anyone. Was I scared? Hell yes. I almost backed out the day of. But I went up there, voice shaking, hands trembling, and I did it. And you know what? I didn't die. No one laughed. A few people even clapped. That 3-minute poem cracked something open in me. Not because it was great, but because I did it anyway. Since that night, I've been doing a lot of inner work. I started going to therapy, which changed everything. I learned that my fear of failure came from early childhood moments when I was only praised for achievements, not effort. I'd internalized the idea that love was conditional. I had to rewire my thinking. One exercise that helped me the most: what would you do if you weren't afraid? I started asking myself that every day. At first, the answers were small. I'd wear what I want. I'd apply for that program. I'd share my writing online. But the more I leaned into those small acts of courage, the more my life changed. I started building a creative portfolio. I published a blog. I even started a podcast with friends, just to share thoughts about fear and growth. And you know what? It's not perfect, but it's real. For the first time, I'm not living to impress or avoid judgment. I'm living to express, to experiment, to fail and get back up. And that's freedom. If you're watching this and you feel stuck, paralyzed by fear, I want you to know you're not alone. But you don't have to stay in that cage. Start small. Do one brave thing, even if your voice shakes. Because life doesn't reward perfection. It rewards presence. And you deserve to show up for your own story.